Shalom, shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Blessed love.
Peace,
Another one.
Yeah, back again. Another Shema, no?
Yes.
Give thanks for the day and another Shabbat, another week, or another strong. How did your strong go?
My strong was good, man. Glory of the day, family. Glory of the day, glory of the day. It's awesome, man. I lost a couple of battles, and that's mainly because my strategy wasn't down. I didn't move the rooks around the way I should have. So my bishop kept on causing some issues because of not being as strategic enough midweek, but I made up for it, and I give thanks that still was able to come back and win that war for this strong. So here we are now, about to give praises through rest and recharging, going into sundown. But we come to you, family. I knew, yes, we come to you to bring the Shema reading.
For sure. Of course, we got to give thanks and praise to the Most High. And peace, Sister Manira.
Yeah, man. Blessed love, man. Blessed love. Yes. Glory to the day. We give thanks and praises to the great Yah for bringing us in to another day, coming into the end of another strong. Yeah, man. So we give full joy for that. Give thanks to Baba Shifu Yah Anu for continued enlightenment and transformation and allowing this space to exist and be able to develop ourselves as Jagnas in the making, and also speak to you, our family, to let you know how we see the Shema readings of the Underway Foundations.
Yeah, man, for sure. I see a couple more people coming into the chat. Peace, my precious.
My name is Precious.
She always got a theme music. Someone always got to sing a theme song when she walk in the room. Peace, Hot Shamani, aka DJ Maxine. Pick up yourself.
Maxine.
So we're gonna start this off, with the preface, and today we're gonna be speaking about conflict resolution and some of the scenarios that may occur between the potential mates, the main pairing of the man and the woman, and we're coming off the back of the other part of because we're still in part 2, the second stage of dating. I mean mating, not dating. She could edit that up. Yeah. The second part of mating. First part of mating dealt with coming together and understanding common interests and understanding what the Most High has given to you, as a vision. And now we're dealing with conflict resolution and seeing how well you two meld together in a real world sense. So the first thing we're going to do is go over the preface. And the preface says that this book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line of this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential. The truth is and the words of this book out loud. You're not reading it in your mind, because when you say it out loud, you get a chance to actually listen to what it is you're saying and what's coming out of your mouth. And you can gauge, how it is that you used to move versus how it is that this culture that you are now exploring and implementing is now telling you should be moving. And sometimes that's a rough thing, and that causes an internal conflict. So we're talking all about conflicts today.
Yeah, man, for sure. And it's something just to build on what you were speaking about, reading the text out loud. Just recently, Chief had actually expressed a mode of teaching to us where he spoke about the two senses, which would be sight and sound, or in this case now speaking, sorry. So he gave us an example, and it's something I won't dwell on too long, but if you watch a thriller without sound, you're able to tolerate, you're able to, in most cases, not be impulse. You can actually sit and indulge in what actually is being showed to you. But you put that Dolby Digital on, you know.
Surround sound.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just you didn't even see Jason yet. Yeah, Jason. Yeah, that does something different to you, right? So it's the same concept when it comes to reading texts such as this out loud, especially texts that are instructive texts that are life changing, texts that give you a mode of mental calculation that originally you would not have had. There's an aspect of you that is then activated. So it's just something to keep in mind there. So I'll channel some chief here. Well, let's get into some things, right?
I think you got a impersonation for everybody now.
Yeah, but that's awakening that atrocity energy with that pirate, Yeah, man. So we are, like Aki Antonio said, at stage 2 of the courtship phase. And so let's imagine now if we did this over the course of total courtship 9 months. So we split them into 3 seasons. First season would be stage 1, second season, stage 2, third season, obviously process elimination would be stage 3. So let's imagine now that you would have done 15 minutes a day of conversing, all right? Just kind of a recap of what have been discussed over the past strongs of the Shema reading. So you would have done your 15 minutes of communication. You would have asked a few vital questions. Certainly not all. With the man and the woman, they're listening to each other with all of their intellects. You're getting to understand the vision. And now, at this stage, we start to look at real world situations. We start to now actually interact outside of the Anu ministries under obviously the watchful eye and the chaperone. So off of that, I'll read the passage for today. So this will be the second paragraph of stage 2. At this stage, you will explore conflict resolution methods that are employed by the family based on the Anu procedures provided. It is important to provide scenarios to each other that are based on real-world situations. In this phase, the woman gathers an opportunity to learn the intellect of the home. The Anu woman needs to become wise to the ways of the man in his home. At this stage, the man should plan outings that also include the chaperoning jegna. Suitable outings include but are not limited to the following: museums, festivals, lectures, workshops, poetry readings, charity events, annual retreats, and gatherings. And that is the end of the reading. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. The thing that stuck out to me was real world scenarios. And I think it was Hot Shamani who had mentioned it a few lives back in the chat when we were talking about initial meetings, and she was saying that some people are on their best behavior. I think it was the length of time. Some people are on their best behavior for the first couple of months, try to get their foot in the door. Yeah, and you have a real world outing to where a situation may happen where you may not be able to fake it. You may be so caught off guard with something, or something may be so offensive based on your calculations thus far and how you what you brought to the table, that you can't really fake an answer. You have to respond honestly, and you have to be willing to take the reverberation of that response. So someone may say something that you can't really hide your facial expression like you would if you were on the phone. You might say, yeah, when I come home, you better have, oh, shalom, Brother Lo. When I come home, you better have shalom, Uba Sequoia and Sister Naya. When I come home, you better have my dinner ready. Better have my slippers laid out. You better be ready to rub my feet. And she might be like, you might not have seen it if you were both on the phone. So there may be a conflict of values. There may be a conflict of what you think the roles may be, which you would have discussed earlier. But discussing something and actually being in a real world situation, there's a lot of guttural responses that you can't hide and you can't disguise them.
True. And off of that, as we get a little further deep in, let's go ahead and put the question out there.
Sure.
Okay, and just reminding everybody as you start to move your comments in that there is a 20-second delay, so we don't want you to think that we're just disregarding your statements as we get into the flow, but there is a 20-second delay. And the question is, do you have any character flaws that would make conflict resolution necessary? So that's not even think about the other person. Think about yourself.
Yeah.
Do you have any character flaws that would make conflict resolution necessary?
It's funny how you said don't think about the other person, because it's usually when a conflict happens, someone says something along the lines of, "Well, they made me do it." Yeah. If you didn't say it like that, then you wouldn't have made me feel like I had to defend myself.
Yeah, or it's the role reversal deflection, which is, it's not you, it's really me. I'm thinking it's probably me because let's explore this a little bit. So we often have to keep on reminding ourselves that every day as the sun goes down, we want to always apply introspection to our movement and our walk, and self-courtship does not ever stop. It always continues as you advance through life and through the years and through the seasons. You always want to keep on discovering aspects of yourself. And the truth of the matter is, no matter who you think you are, no matter what you are, when you actually become mated, there will be aspects of you that transform. It's the reason why the fire and the water sit across from each other. So those things we often want to keep close to our hearts as far as the self-courtship. So now we talk about real world situations and scenarios, right? So let me ask you this, Aki. What would be, in your opinion, even let's look outside of mating, as close as you and I are, there are aspects of conflict resolution that over time, even as simple as where we set up, how you may have to, as my brother, also speak to me about ways that I may be moving that may not be in balance. So I think off of this point, I'll just, for a point of reference for those who would not have gone as far into the Anu way yet.
I wouldn't want to give them the answers right away.
No?
No, they don't need all the answers right away. Right now, let's say they're natural responses.
Okay.
We can always,
We're going to get back to you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you on that.
All right, see, now that there was almost a form of conflict resolution.
Yeah, because he wanted to do something some way. I thought it would be better if we did it another way.
Well, there we go, right?
Yeah.
So simple things like that, just understanding each other and understanding why and being able to communicate and explain. Those things are necessary. And that there should be covered in a lot of cases in your stage one, because your intellect is, you're starting to understand each other's vibrations, and also to you're speaking with your Jagna. Mm-hmm. And I think at this stage, like Aki, Antonio, and I were having a discussion when we actually were breaking down the passage individually or collectively before the broadcast this evening. One of the things that we both agreed on is the importance in this case of you really leaning on your Jagna. Because there are going to be aspects of, especially when you start coming together in personal space, as far as your outings and so on, that by default you may be a little offbeat, you may be trying a little hard, as people like to say, or like you said, Shamlik said before, on the best behavior. There may be some aspects about yourself that you really, really don't recognize. Some little Afrobeat going on in the background. Yeah, we good to go. Yeah, man. Yeah, but so there may be some aspects of yourself that you really don't see. You may be a dismissive person. You may be somebody who, as a man, you may not be as assertive enough when it comes to this type of setting compared to outside of the setting. Maybe in your ministries you're on point, but when it comes now to a potential love relationship or makeup, your Jagna may realize that you become a little more reserved than you need to be. As a woman, your Jagna may realize that possibly you're a little too assertive, or maybe you find the need to ramble on, or perhaps you dance around answering questions.
Yeah, or it could be like Coach Shamanika said, she stays quiet when it comes to conflict.
Yep.
And it's not always effective. but it's not effective in all situations. So that may happen. Someone may ask you a question, you give a one-word answer. So where you from? America. Where'd you grow up? In the States. All right.
Something even to another aspect of conflict resolution, which I know the sister started to touch on it last week, was when the topic of condescending on a vision came up. And just in that dialogue alone, as we progressed through it, where the sisters leaned into the thought that they didn't realize how it actually would have been considered condescending, how voice tone, pitch modulations do make a difference if an untimely question that seems very casual comes out in a certain type of discourse. So as simple as, well, why would you want to do that? That can become a conflict. Well, hopefully that your stage one would have covered areas that way, so you're not rubbed the wrong way when certain questions come to you, especially when they're very direct. Keep in mind you only got 15 minutes, and if you're really, really building a level of efficient momentum, you'll be scaling it down to 5 minutes every conversation anyway before your outings. So, that there sometimes can present a need for conflict, because maybe perhaps a brother may take it offensive, or perhaps if you say something that the brother says, nah, I don't want that kind of stuff in my home. Like just his shrewdness, sorry, not shrewdness in this case, his stoic position towards it, or militancy, in reference to the things that he wants directly in his vicinity or not, maybe a reason for you, for the other 90% of the things that you're really embracing, to probably become a little more reserved towards him, or even possibly even push back. That may sometimes mean that you have to consult with your Jagna. So how do you deal with those kind of things? Because those things will come up. Like Chief has often reminded us that we're not related to these people, and there are real life situations. I've been traveling for 24 hours, and they lost all of the artifacts that I purchased, all of the collectibles, and here it is. You're on the phone nagging me about something that maybe somebody else didn't do, and I probably snap at you because I'm talking to 3 other people. How do we deal with that kind of thing if possibly I'm very short with you? It's little simple things. Most conflicts that are very great, they become great because they drag on, which is something that we will discuss later on in the way with reference to how we actually are supposed to view why we need conflict resolution. So, Aki?
Yeah, man. Another thing to realize too is we're setting ground rules as well. It's not just if you're on an outing and a situation happens right there. You might actually encounter or witness 2 other people making a scene. And you might turn to the other person like, if you ever try to make a scene in public, I'm just gonna walk away from you. It might be something like that. We don't put our business on Front Street. We go to the side and we discuss what's going on, and we hash it out like adults and directly. We're not gonna scream back and forth at each other, throwing drinks at each other, stuff like that. So you might take this time, or you should take this time, especially the men, to establish the ground rules of how you're going to address points of conflict, points of differing opinion or differing view. And you come to a singular consensus when you do that directly. If you avoid it, then it festers, and then we get situations like our Cruz was just mentioning. It's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, because you hold it in for so long and you don't address it directly, and you don't address it like right away. As soon as you see that there is an issue or a potential issue, you pull them to the side and say, listen, this, and this is why this is an issue, and I'm going to address this now before this furniture flying all over the room.
Bless it up, Chief. Bless it up.
Peace.
Yes. We have a comment from
Sequoia.
Yeah, House of Bell.
Yeah, so Sequoia says, I would say yes. I think of us I think all of us have inherent character flaws, and misunderstandings are bound to happen. Very true. We need one another to point out what's on the small of our back that we cannot see. Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
There are certain things about us that we can't see.
Yes.
And again, that's why having the jegna and the chaperone is so important, because
Absolutely.
there's parts of us that we can see on the other person. There's parts that we can see on the other person that we're mating with. There's parts that they can see on us. But the jegna are there, and they're objective about it, and they can be like, look, both of y'all being messed up. Yeah, I see you noticed that there was something wrong with the brother, but the way you approached it was wrong. But I see you notice that there's something wrong with the system. The way you approached it was wrong.
Yeah.
And you have like, I don't want to say referees. It's not like a prize fight, but you definitely have two people who can make sure that it's a very sober and productive experience.
True. One of the other things to think about too, where conflict is concerned, doesn't necessarily have to be something that the conflict the way we may possibly hash in our mind. It can also be the levels of dysfunction that still may be present, maybe the way we view certain things, perhaps maybe our ideals are possibly not aligned in with somebody who is heavily thinking should have. Maybe even it could be perhaps things such as our diet, maybe the way we dress. One of the conversations that tends to come up is the transition of attire for both men and women. Men dressing modestly. Some brothers, especially the ones who are more active in gyms, they may want to show their chest and so on. That's a common thing. And I know we don't do that. We don't show our chest. Some women possibly they don't see the need to take off pants. Again, culture. So those aspects of
sexual harassment too.
Yeah. I read that. I just read it. Yeah, I took her. So covering the hair, makeup, things of so. These are things that often need to be discussed and addressed as far as when they do come up. Perhaps it could be when we get around relatives. How do we encounter certain conversations, which is something we'll get into in the sisters reading next week. So it's really having these discussions, and one of the best ways to do is to enforce communication. For instance, one of our new brothers, he has regular family meetings, where the entire family sits down. So conflict is not just the maiden; it's also the entire family, whoever is under the control of that master of the house. Yeah. So these things also have to be discussed. It could be discipline. Perhaps I meet a woman, no sister who has children, and the children are in the house. Maybe they're older, they're in college, things of the sort. How do we deal with these things? Progressions. It could be fundraisers that we do as a family. So there are many areas that we would need to also resolve, in addition to things that may possibly be more personality engaged, triggers as people like to call them, or as they're named, or titles rather. So us discussing how these things are resolved to also make sure they never come up. Your jegna, again, your jegna. If you would have balanced yourself, like we discussed earlier, you'd have seen the necessity of diligently seeking a jegna. If you're in Anu, we have an overarching jegna, and then we also have our Anu brothers, our community, and then we have senior brothers. For those of us, the men and the women, also of the same level, right? So those things are very important when it comes to having that trust and faith that there are areas of you, like Emma was saying, the small of your back that you cannot see, you cannot reach, you haven't really mastered those levels of precision and movements yet. You need your jagna to assist you with that. Like you mentioned, there may be things that possibly take a difference of opinion with, and this is what touched on earlier with reference to the type of outings. I want you to take note of the outings. Yeah, we're people who are heavily minded, and some may think of it as a conscious, and these are the type of places we go to. But think about this: museums. For one to appreciate a museum, one gets very involved with what it is that's actually being on display. One is in tune, loving history. They're futuristic in thinking. They're understanding causes and effects of where we are, landmarks, artifacts, those kind of things. Festivals. In most cases, a festival is themed. So then that's also a level of dialogue and discourse with reference to how one embraces possibly other cultures and so on, things that you would tend to see at festivals, lectures, again, very involved. So it would be expected that one has a point of view based on information, the body of information that is being provided. Workshops, again, that's pretty much self-explanatory. It's expected that you're coming away from a workshop with something intellectually, or you're going to a workshop to actually input something intellectually, in most cases, or it could be something physical, right? Poetry readings, levels of self-expression, gives an opportunity for us to see those aspects of the self. Charity events. Hopefully it'll be a charity event that you're much more involved with. As we accelerate, and I know we are encouraged to always reach for the higher points. So again, self-explanatory. Annual retreats and gatherings. How is it now when everything comes home? You would have witnessed each other in communities outside of yours directly. How do we move through the world? And now when it comes to annual retreats and gatherings, how do we interact amongst ourselves in the community? That there's going to be something key that I think anybody who's really, really strongly considering matehood, or mateship rather, will look at the high levels of scrutiny. How is it that his brothers view him, and he views his brothers? How do they interact together? Is he qualified by them? And also the same for the sisters.
Mm-hmm. And also the same for the elders and even the children in the community.
Yes.
Everybody comes together, and they have different avenues and different expressions, but definitely everybody is congealing and trying to make sure that we have a singular mode of operation, which is the culture, right? So we view things a certain way, and we view things from our own angles, coming from our own angles, and that's one of the beautiful things of a community. There's so many different moving parts, but everyone is still marching towards the same goal. And that comes about with these various outings as well. You're coming together in a museum. And I actually had the pleasure of going on a museum date. No museums over here, but I did visit New York once.
You got a beach.
You got a beach. Got a couple. Yeah, I did go to a museum once, and it was a museum date. And you learn a lot about the person just from what they want to see in the museum. Like, we went to the museum, the first thing I saw on the list was arms and armor. I wanted to see the medieval swords and stuff. And then we went to see the paintings, we went to see all the stuff, and things that the other person would notice you may not recognize. Or maybe they may see a painting that stirs up something that you may not have heard during the discovery session, because it's something that was so deep that a piece of art could have stirred up a memory that they probably wouldn't have been able to conjure up themselves. It may have been a traumatic experience, it may have been a joyful experience, but now you get to learn something new. And that's the beauty of the courtship process. You're getting to know a fellow island brother or sister. So on these outings, you may also get to see, where you have a difference in opinions. Use the museum example again. I may love a painting that the other person hates, and we might get into a discussion as to why we love or hate that thing. And now we have a certain understanding of how we should move. So even earlier when you were like, let's go through the conflict resolution, I was like, I don't think we should go through that yet. We understand, Abu and I have been around each other long enough to know that this isn't really something that she should make a big deal about. He knows that I have a reason for saying it, just as I knew that he has a reason for going into it as well. And we were able to have a dialogue, not really with words, but what we were experiencing between one another. And that's one of the good things about being in the same space as the person that you're courting as well. You're not just on the phone talking to them, you're actually feeling them energetically. And you may have a different sort of vibe coming off of them. And that might be, a very pleasant vibe, or the person may rub you the wrong way, and you have to explore why. Otherwise, that's going to fester and, again, straw that broke the camel's back.
You know, and one of the things that we have to go to now, we're gonna, I won't say make a transition, but we're gonna walk down this particular aisle, which would be the in this phase, the woman gathers an opportunity to learn the intellect of the home. Very, very important. You know, the brother has certain things that he does. You know, and there is a need for that level of discussion to happen. Why is this here? Of course, relatively, right? Not, you know, why is that there? Oh, why do you have that there? No, don't become a nag with it. Yeah. You know, and of course, keep in mind you're not, you know, walking into the quarters as yet, but you know, just understanding the philosophy of which the homestead he wants to be run and how it is that he expects it to be run, because you are now going to be given certain appointments. And with that, there comes a direct need for you to understand that intelligence, because it will be one day when you have to communicate that to the children. Why does this happen? Why does that happen? You know, I think it was Brother Zach who said, you know, when the silverback says it's time to go up the mountain, it's time to move. The whole herd moves. So we don't need anybody in the tribe stepping off. And he needs to pour everything intellectually into you that's needed as far as for you to manage the prerogatives that he gives you in the homestead. So you need to be able to communicate that. So we are actually able to speak with one voice. Again, relatively being knowledge and wisdom within itself. But certainly that there's something very important, you know, that there's an area of conversation that you better to have at the earlier points. Especially to keep it in mind, but you look at the fascia of questions that we had raised from the solutions book with reference to your plans for 5 years, 10 years. Certainly those type of things such as living accommodations comes up also with the fact that one of the questions is what do you feel about living in rural areas? Maybe perhaps it's going to be the transition to a rural area. There's a family plot of land that we're moving to. You may have the issue living around family, especially if they're not family members. So these type of discussions will happen, you know. And again, that may be a level that needs to be imposed with conflict resolution. You maybe were adamant not to move there in the direct vicinity of relatives who are not Anu practitioners or Anu followers of the way. So these are discussions that will definitely be had. You know, the brother says that he needs his floors swept with a damp mop every morning. You know, are you prepared to get up a half an hour earlier? Can you see it? Yeah. He when you clean the house, he wants the walls scrubbed. Man, I don't know. You got it, sis? You got it? You know, so yeah, them things there, you know, man.
Yeah. And you may have a talent that he may not, he may not know what to do with it. You know, are you going to be blending, bonding with someone who can actually put you in a position that you can win, you know, with what it is that the creator has given you. You may have received a vision that he doesn't value it at all. And if you're here to do something like teach, or if you're here to do something like medicine, he says, I don't want you around no children, or I don't want you around no sick people. There's a conflict there. You know, is that something that you're going to address, or are you going to hold it in until it's too late? You know, and that's the same thing for the man. If you know that what it is that you're trying to do, or what it is that you don't want in your space, is something that she may have to deal with, or she's already had a certain level of engagement with, are you willing to pull her away from that? You know, I remember Chief had said something like, if you meet a sister, obviously this isn't our new culture, but if you meet a sister and she likes to wear, you know, short skirts and weave and a bunch of makeup on her face, why would you pursue her and try to make a project out of her when you have sisters who are looking to live a certain way, who are looking to live your culture? Why would you go after someone who's living in a diverse culture and try to change that? So there are some situations and scenarios where that conflict resolution can really help the relationship to blossom, but sometimes it can reveal that this relationship may not be something that can bear sane fruit, you know. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Put it in the chat.
Yeah, man. One of the other things is the brother might say, the only pants wearing in his home, worn in his home, is by him.
Mm-hmm.
Women are forbidden to wear pants in his home. That was communicated to us before, with reference to the way Anu elder runs his home. So it could be a number of things that perhaps you may not be used to, especially if this brother is a brother who's coming to you enlightened. He's navigating the course of development. He's moving into self-mastery. It's lights out at a certain time. There's no food. No one touches the pot until daddy's home. That's a old school thing from that. And some people can still relate to it. Perhaps, hopefully, all of you in the chat can. But when the king gets home, that's when the pot is touched. When mommy cook, when mama cook, nothing comes out of the pot until daddy's food is placed in front of him, and he starts to eat. Other than that, everybody eat air sandwich.
Yeah, that's a very old school way of doing this on the island.
Yeah.
And on certain islands, there are still places that this happen. And of course, these are very light examples.
Mm-hmm.
You may have a situation where someone blatantly lies to their mate's face. How do you deal with that? Or someone gets caught stealing. Or someone goes overboard when disciplining children. There are various levels of conflicts that may happen, and you've got to have a protocol in place with how you're going to resolve them. But I just want to go to the chat real quick. I think there was a comment from Sister Manira. Okay, Manira says, yes, not always expressing myself in the moment. Issues should be addressed in real time. Why don't you address things in the moment? That's a question you should ask.
That's what I'm queer.
Peace and queer. Yeah, so I'll ask that. Sometimes I do the same thing.
Yeah.
Something would happen, and rather than opening my Pandora's box, I would take a step back and really try to analyze the situation, or I might walk away. And I might say something like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or I might just leave the room.
Yeah.
And then come back and put you to the side. Like, listen, what happened the other day? I was so angry I didn't want to open my mouth because I might have said something that I would have regret. But this is why I was angry in that moment.
True. It's a story. I have a brother who, years ago, he was married, and he often told me the joke. He said, "Well, you gotta deal with things up front. You can't allow petty feelings and I guess lower lying emotions to dictate how you actually interact as a couple, as a family." And he used the example of his wife and his situation. He says, "Cruz, man, I got divorced over a cap of ketchup." He was I guess getting ready to go out someplace, and they had just finished eating, and he left the cap of ketchup on the table, not placed back on the bottle. So actually, just those who like studying what I'm saying, he obviously wasn't an issue with the ketchup. It was the fact that he was getting ready to leave, or whatever else was mounting up leading into that process. He said, "Man, look here, Cruz, she screwed me up and put the ketchup top of my face. You always leaving this stuff." So there's many things wrong with that. Obviously, for the fact that you get to that point and they're interacting with each other, certainly there's obviously a level of dysfunction in there.
Yeah, obviously, she said always. So
Yeah.
It's probably a history of not maybe the ketchup, but other than
it's all the other things on the plate.
Straw.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Straw.
Yeah. So, but certainly, had it been something that was addressed, it would have given him an opportunity to possibly diffuse any feelings that she may have had that possibly could have been miscommunicated, could have been ill-advised, just as well as if they had things that maybe was being offensive towards her, that he possibly could have also rendered the opportunity to adjust his steps with. So certainly, I think we all can relate to the hindsight mindset, where we should have done things differently, we should have said things differently. and should have also dealt with things appropriately and in more of the moment. Certainly in the enclosure of private conversations, and with a level of objectivity present, as opposed to you just looking to talk down to somebody, because sometimes you're dead wrong. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. So in this case now, we have the Anu way, we have the Holy Text to guide us.
Yeah. So now that brings us to our next question. Simple question. How do you deal with conflict? Sister Shamanika said something along the lines of she gets quiet. That if a situation may get, a little bit too confrontational, she may get quiet. And that's not always the best or most effective response. Just to paraphrase what she had said.
Yeah. Some people can only deal with conflicts by writing letters. Some people will, have enough self-control that they may have actual need to express themselves, possibly a little more, I won't say aggressively, but certainly a little more militantly, but realize that possibly you may not be able to tolerate that, or to take that, to stand that, without getting the point across to you in a manner that may cause more harm than good for you as a person who's being looking to be transformed. So, those things are very important to understand from your personal measurement, as far as, are you a person who maybe overreacts when conflicts are presented to you, depending on the nature of the conflict. You have some people who just go ballistic when it comes to things to do with their family and directly in the house. Some people become very agitated when it comes to things to do with their children. As far as even just basic conversations, you as a woman may have an issue like Aki Antonio was saying, with levels of disciplining or over disciplining. Here in the Bahamas, it's very common to see someone pulling off their belt and whooping their children in front of their classmates. Coming from further up north in North America, you may see that as excessive. There are possibly people on this in the chat right now who've never beat their children and possibly cringe at the notion. Whereas me, my hands are like butter. I'm starting the lawnmower. Bruce Lee on you. Ooh, I'm fast. Did I hit you? So, yeah, man. So it's many things. But Aki, I wanted you to build on that some more with reference to how people actually deal with conflict.
Yeah. Personally, the first thing I try to do before I try to make sure the situation doesn't escalate. Because I know once people start to indulge in their emotions, we can sort of veer off of what's happening in the moment. We get into something that isn't even going on, So you and I could be speaking about something, and someone interrupts, and they keep talking. It's like, okay, that's all well and good. Hold on, let me finish. Let you finish. You ain't even. It was just me and him talking.
Yeah, you were supposed to start in the first place.
Right. So the first thing I try to do is run the situation back to them, like give them a play-by-play. So let me get straight. He and I are speaking. You come out of the blue, inject your opinion when it wasn't asked for, and then when I try to be graceful and actually, speak to what you were speaking to, you cut me off and tell me not to let you finish. So I want you to think about that. And that's usually where it goes. And it can go into one of the first things people try to do, which is be defensive, and first thing they try to defend is their intentions. Well, that's not what I meant. I meant this. It's like, I don't care what you meant. This is what you did. So you can take a step back and look at your actions and what it is that you were trying to do and what it is that you actually did. How in control of yourself are you? That's one of the main things that I look at in a conflict situation. And that's why sometimes I have to walk away, because something is said and it's so irritating. But at the same time, I know if I engage with it, I'd be as much of an idiot as the other person. So, for example, I went to pick up something from a store the other day. It was like curbside service, and I went to the curb, and I was basically handing the money to the person and saying, "This is what I want." Like, I'm basically 6 feet away from her. I'm on this side of the car, and she's on this side of the car, outside of the car on the sidewalk. She refuses to serve me until I put a mask on. And it irritated me, but I had to recognize that I was in their space. So no matter how stupid it seemed to me, I still,
Yeah.
you can hear
Travel
from
to Rome, brother.
you can hear from the words I'm using. It irritated me.
Yeah.
No matter how little it makes sense to me, I'm in someone else's space, and I have to recognize that. So I put my mask on, give her the money. Wait for her to come back. I had already taken the mask off. She refused to give me my stuff until I put the mask back on. It's like, put it in the trunk. I opened the trunk. Put it in the trunk. And she wasn't bringing it. Someone else was bringing it. But it was just the policy that she was trying to enforce for. Yeah, I should leave it right there. That's the policy she was trying to enforce. And you can see how hard I had to fight myself from framing the situation the way I saw it.
True.
Instead of explaining it the way that it happened. So conflict can definitely spiral out of control, but we can't see it objectively. So Chief says in the chat, first conflict is dealt with by not ignoring it. I make sure my perception isn't getting in the way of resolution. I also look at confrontation as an opening for growth. That is very true. It's that situation. It could have been an opportunity to move in the opposite direction, not grow.
Yeah, true. And one of the things to think about, like how you were walking down that path and just visualizing what Chief said about using as the opportunity to grow, for growth rather, is you may be a person who blows your top when it comes to conflicts. You may be very irrational. That is an opportunity for you to go like, hey, why do you actually become so enraged about things to the point that there's no communicating with you? It's just a bunch of outpouring as opposed to something to ingest or intake. Even if it's just for a point of view. You're asking a question, you're demanding an answer, but we'll let the person speak. You know what I mean? And that's like kind of standard, especially in like low vibrating dysfunctional mindsets. So those factors we definitely think about with reference to the way we approach people and approach conflicts. Very encouraging, I know, to think 7 times before we speak. So if that's the case, of course, conflict, that's something that you'd be employed to even more so. Chief added something else?
Yes, he said, also seeking to comprehend what the other individual cares about to infuse empathy into the process. I also try to find resolution that is non-punitive but balancing for all. Yeah, that's wisdom right there. Yeah, and to your earlier point, Chief, and to our earlier question, our first question, that may be something that a character flaw that I have. That's a character flaw that I have that would probably lead to. I keep using these qualifiers. Maybe, probably. That's that's a character flaw that I have that would lead to, conflict resolution being necessary. I can be impatient, and my impatience may stop me or prevent me from being empathetic in the situation. So that would be an opportunity for me to grow and learn some more patience. Chief also says, if physical proximity is possible, I employ it as it is a nonverbal expression of intimacy. So body language and facial expressions is valuable. That is very true as well.
See, that's what I'm talking about. Chief just be giving it to you. Yeah, man. No, but definitely can appreciate body language. You get a million captions just by looking at the way someone looks away when you ask them a question, just by the way somebody takes a deep exhale because they can't stand the eye contact, especially if it's an uncomfortable conversation that maybe you're having to check somebody on. Or perhaps even the way a person positions themselves. If they face you, do they turn their shoulders to you when the dialogue starts? Do they lean? Do they prefer not to sit? Is it, very, very simple things that are what we call standard impulses in a level of greetings or interactions. But certainly, if there's a shift or a resistance towards something that becomes natural, especially if you've been observing the person for any length of time, it gives you an indicator as far as what's really happening in their mind. Perhaps maybe you sit and ask more questions and pick at it from the side and then make your entrance in. Just as well as Chief said, maybe the person is completely silent and that gives you all the answers you need. Maybe I throw this one back to the streets, so.
Silence is a good tool when you have a disagreement, because someone may say something and they may be so heated that they may not realize what it is they're saying. So staying silent rather than firing right back, you give them a chance to slow down and realize the position that they're taking. Because after a conflict starts, it's very easy to get trapped in the goal of trying to be right, to come out victorious, as opposed to, like Chief had said, having a non-punitive and balancing resolution. You can come out trying to feel like, yeah, I had to tell him, I had to tell her, you don't talk to me like that. You want to feel instead of actually looking at something from a top-down view and saying, is this really relevant to what it is that we're trying to achieve? Did I come to this space to argue with this person?
True.
Did they come here to argue with me? Chief had also said, I seek clarity before reacting. I may say, let me see if I have this straight, or am I hearing what you're saying correctly? It opens the door to understanding instead of forcing agreements. Very true.
I'm gonna keep those ones.
So yeah, this.
So let me see if I got this
straight.
straight. Let me see if I got this straight. So you saying to me, you put salt on the mango.
Yeah. Chief had also given us one a few years ago, and I've kept it. What do you mean? That's seeking understanding as well. And I often use it when someone says something that's accusatory to me, rather than defending myself, and that actually gives them a chance to clarify their position. So yeah, I definitely yeah, y'all gonna put salt on mango? Yeah, that definitely gives you a chance to really see where the other person is coming from. I want to say too that if you ever find yourself in a situation where you disagree with someone and they start attacking you, realize that there's no reason to go back and forth with an argument, because they've realized that they may not have a leg to stand on, and now you have to deal with their emotional attack. So how would you handle that, Bruce?
Well, one of the things I think about when you start to mention that is a lot of times we witness some of these things in the way our mates would interact with other people. So it's also a point of their conduct. Otherwise, keeping in mind that there's a level of respect for your presence that the person should have. So in most cases, it would be wise to ask the person, especially if you're willing, if you've been able to observe it, it'd be wise to ask the person what they're feeling. This is how I would approach it. What are you feeling in the moment when you react this way? When you say or do certain things, what is it that's actually going through your mind? Why did you say this? Really, really try to get to the why. Um, I don't really use the term. Let me see if I have the straight. It sounds much better than what I usually say. Be like, so tell me now. Hold on. Tell me, right? Tell me. Speak to me, right? Express yourself. That really wanting the person to understand. In a lot of cases, you would find that the person unravels a feeling that maybe perhaps they didn't expose prior to. I remember an example was given to us by our elder with reference to two of his consorts having a conflict in front of him while he was courting another sister. And he, you know, threw the two sisters back to the street. And the fact that they, as senior sisters who've been with him for years, would not respect his presence to the point that they will actually have a conflict in front of him, in such a manner, speaks volumes that he thought that it was in his best interest to cut the ties because it brought conflict to the house. So that is another thing with reference to how you should be dealing with things very militantly, meaning what you say and saying what you mean, thinking very strategic about it. Of course, you want to look at your conflict resolution methodologies prior to even bringing them to the woman. As a king, you know how you want your homestead to be run and how you want your kingdom to be run, especially when you're looking at the foresight of expansion. So your viewpoints and various vantage points must be very diverse. You have to think for this person. You know that certain things are going to come up, especially if you know their background. You've been able to observe them. You and your Jegna will also need to have. It's in your best interest that you have certain conversations with your Jegna. Your Jegna may be like, "You got to be out of your mind." You know what I mean? That's impractical. So, bring it back to the original point. Sorry.
No, sorry, I cut you off.
No, I just said bring it back to the original point. Is really communication, without rambling on. Just to make sure that isn't lost. Is really communication. What is going on in the person's mind when they say certain things? Because sometimes you're taken aback by people. Some people become very impulsive. You don't realize how impulsive yourself is, just as well as how impulsive the other person may be until you're confronted with certain things. So certainly, if the person would have qualified to the point of making it to stage 2 or even possibly marriage with me, I definitely would, if I've never seen that type of interaction or reaction from them before, would do very well to understand what it is that's causing it, because it could be something else there, just to make sure I'm covered. I'm covering all bases, but certainly after that, if there's something that's very detestful and non-righteous, has to be dealt with. And it could be penalties. Justice must be served.
Right. What I was going to say earlier was you were going to get into, the Anu way and the conflict resolution that was outlined in there. And that's something that you both would have had to have already, read or have already studied under your respective judgments.
Yep.
So before you even get to the emotional part of it, which may sometimes override what you learn if you don't practice it enough. You may learn something in a book, like a cookbook. Like maybe if you're cooking a certain dish, you may want to add your seasoning first before adding certain ingredients, because adding those ingredients with that seasoning may cause a different effect. Like if you're cooking mushrooms, you don't want to put salt on mushrooms because they turn mushy and watery, as opposed to cooking all of your veggies and then adding the mushrooms afterwards. And you may take 3 or 4 tries to get that right. You may not have 3 or 4 tries to call someone out of their name before you realize maybe you shouldn't be calling someone out of their name. Or you may not have 3 or 4 tries to speak with someone directly about a problem you may have with them before you actually realize maybe I shouldn't have told my aunt, sisters, uncle, cousin about what so-and-so might have said about me, according to my niece's nephew's brother.
There's another point, sorry, just to insert there. Another point is there's no need to be bothered by things outside of Anu when it comes to points of views and how you interact with each other. And that's another thing that you want to cover inside of your homestead also. because maybe perhaps the other person, even yourself, may not be quite to that point yet. So there are certain things that you may want to have to discuss amongst each other that not just enforces the homestead policy, but also ANU policy and how it is that we interact with the world by and large, and bring those interactions to our homestead, or how we manifest the brand of our homestead into the world as it applies to ANU culture.
Yeah. Of course, peace, Kashia
Kashia.
in space. Chief says, I keep in mind that conflict is occurring, or I keep in mind that conflict is occurring because we are both trying to or we're both trying to arrive at the same place, but from differing angles. So a solution is ever present, and staying on topic helps with resolution.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So on that point, as far as, of course, the topic of discussion, which is conflict resolution, well, let's get into this back bit.
Sure. We're just gonna read through conflict resolution and then close out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So conflict resolution. If you find yourself in conflict with your brother or sister within ANU, these are the steps you must follow. In secret, confront the individual and explain to them what you see as the issue, the effect it is having on you, the community, or what you see as a resolution based on our doctrine. Listen to their side of the issue and strive to arrive at a place of common agreement, love, and respect. If that is not possible, bring 2 or 3 objective ANU members to hear each of your viewpoints. This allows for the matter to be witnessed by those other than you two, in order to sustain the poise of all parties involved. These observers will then provide solutions and evaluations based on our teachings and way of life. 3. If this does not bring a resolution that goes beyond logistics but establishes and maintains peace, harmony, and reverence, then all those in conflict and witnesses must bring the matter up the ranking to the headship of ANU. The leadership will hear the matter and a judgment will be passed. This judgment is not debatable and is the final decree. If any party chooses not to comply with the judgment of leadership, at that point they will be removed from ANU as they are deemed non-members of this community and will be subject to disfellowship and excommunication. This is the process. Inside of a Sikh culture, we are adapted to working closely with individuals while harboring great disdain for them and resentment. We will even attend arbitration and conflict resolution, walking away soured by statements such as long as they pay me, I don't care. I don't have to like them to work with them. We will just agree to disagree. You hear that a lot in couples disagreements. This is tolerated in the world of demise and disorder, but within the proverbial and physical walls of ANU, it will not be enjoyed. We must be able to look beyond the logistics of working together and focus on the ethics that ought to bind us all together. If that is not happening, someone is not entirely invested into this undertaking or the overlying 14 keys that should be reshaping the minds of our parents. So naturally, that is conflict resolution as it relates to ANU as a community. If you are ANU homestead, the conflict resolution process will be different because the master of your house says this is what it is. You don't step outside of that homestead when it comes to how he sees that his homestead should be run. So that's something to think about for both brothers and sisters also.
Powerful.
Well, that's exactly when you catch up with us.
Oh man. But yeah, for sure. Especially the part about going beyond logistics. I've seen lots of people go through the motions and walk away from an attempt, like a wholehearted attempt to rebalance and bring peace to the situation. And the whole time they're like rolling their eyes, shifting the weight. Can I go now? They want to go through it to say, or they want to get over it. They don't want to go through it. I'll put it that way. They don't necessarily want to get to the heart of the issue because sometimes they want to be mad.
Yeah.
They want to stay mad. Some people are addicted to emotions.
Yeah, man. So keep on. Remember, Look for the chain, man. Keep on pulling yourself up to higher space. You know, balancing and aligning, man. So off of that, family, as we get ready for the Sabbath, the sun is downturning. Let's live in peace, non-conflict, non-conflict, non-conflict.
And if there is conflict, let's reach a peaceful and righteous resolution.
Yeah, man. So, family, those of you who are watching now live, and those of you who will be watching 30 years from now in internet space and YouTube land, you know, check out the links below. Chief Yuya has given us a body and glossary of a curriculum that is life-changing from the 14 keys. I won't call it in chronological order. I don't want to get them incorrect. Grasping with divine power, the 14 keys, solutions for dysfunctional families, the Unobeyed Foundations. You also have Mind, Heart, Words, the Compass, who are male, and thousands of hours of segments that are groundbreaking and life-changing. Let's do the work, let's do the self-work, let's court ourselves so we can actually start creating some healthy families. And it's not for us, it's for those who we are bringing, our children, our grandchildren. Yeah, man.
For sure. Be sure to tune in next strong, and sisters are gonna be covering part 3 of the courtship process, and we're gonna enjoy getting into it.
Yeah.
Until then, give thanks to you all. Give thanks, Chief. Peace to everybody.
Love and harmony, man. Wisdom wine.
Yeah, man. Shabbat shalom.
Love and harmony. Bless.